Hello and welcome to my new channel, Marvelous English. I do have a sister channel called Marvelous French for those who want to learn or improve their French. The link is in the description box below if you'd like to visit that. But I decided to create this channel for those interested in learning or improving their English. Now, while I was online recently, I came across a conversation between two non-native English speakers and heard one of them say something that stood out to me, that was a little particular. So for our first lesson, I wanted to take a look at what this person said and give my feedback and suggestions as a native speaker. Now, disclaimer, my intention is not to mock or make fun of anyone. As we know, mistakes are normal and a part of the learning process. But I thought it might be helpful to look at an authentic example of someone expressing themselves in a natural conversation, as opposed to, for example, me making up a sentence that might not be an accurate reflection of the kinds of mistakes that non-native speakers tend to make. So, we're not going to look at the actual video, and the people involved will of course remain anonymous. We're just going to take a look at the sentence itself. So, this sentence we're going to look at today, which again was stated by a non-native speaker, so we're going to be making some corrections, is, I can tell about my situation. Now, to give a little context, two people were having a conversation. One person was talking about themselves, and that's when the other person said this sentence that we're looking at here, I can tell about my situation. And then this person began to talk about how old they were, and I assume they probably went on to give more details about themselves, maybe where they were from, etc. So, again, we're going to look at this sentence because it doesn't quite sound natural to me. Okay? So let's break down why. Now, I want to talk about the verb to tell. This first piece I'm going to talk about is actually necessary if we want the sentence to be grammatically correct. So it's non-negotiable, so to speak. Now, there are a couple of ways we can use the verb to tell. We can tell something. We can tell a story. We can tell the truth. We can tell a lie. We can also use tell with about, a little like the person did here, but unfortunately we can't tell about something. We tell someone about something. We have to specify who we're talking to whom we're talking. So in this case, we could say, I can tell you about my situation. I can tell you about my situation. And now we have a grammatically correct sentence. However, I think this sentence could use more tweaking, more changes, because even though it's grammatically correct, it still sounds unnatural to me. So let's take a look at I can here. Now, in another context, I can be used to talk about our capabilities, what it's possible to do. For example, he can eat a whole pizza in 5 minutes, or she can speak 4 languages. I can also be used to offer to do someone a favor. I can call a taxi for you if you'd like, or I can take that bag for you. And I think that's why it feels unnatural to me here. The speaker wants to let the other person know what they intend on doing, what they're about to do, what they'd like to do. But I can almost makes it sound like talking about themselves would be doing the other person a favor. So at the very least, we probably want to add something to soften the sentence a little. So maybe I can tell you, or I can tell you about, if you don't mind. So I can work, but it depends on our tone, the context, and whether or not we add something to it to make it sound more like a suggestion or a request for permission than a favor. So when I want to let someone know what I want to do, when I want to ask if it's okay to do something, I might say something like, let me. Why don't I? I'd like to. So I could say, let me tell you about my situation. A lot of times, instead of let me, we just say let me. Let me tell you about my situation. Or, why don't I tell you about my situation? Or, I'd like to tell you about my situation if that's okay. So those options sound a bit more natural to me. But the truth is, I don't really think the word situation quite fits here either. So the speaker says this phrase and then goes on to give information about themselves, as I mentioned before, their age, etc. Now, a situation tends to describe the current environment or circumstances we're in, the things that are happening in our lives. So, for example, a situation might be, I have a friend who wants to take a trip to Italy, but I'd rather visit Australia instead. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Or if someone were living with two roommates who were always loud and they had trouble getting to sleep because of all the noise, that would be their current situation. But here, instead of referring to a situation, the speaker wants to talk about themselves. So we can replace situation with myself, and that would give us, let me tell you about myself, for example. But this still sounds a little strange and could use one more change to make it sound natural. We're almost there, I promise you. So we can add a little or a little bit. So let me tell you a little about myself, or let me tell you a little bit about myself. Now, this sounds natural to me. So basically, because we're going to talk about ourselves, adding a little softens things. We're not going to go on and on about ourselves, but we're just going to share a bit of information. Now, you can learn this as a set, useful phrase to use when you want to talk about yourself. So, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Why don't I tell you a little bit about myself? I'll tell you a little about myself if that's okay. Now, a final note, just as an aside, sometimes to talk and to tell can be somewhat related, right? To talk about something, to tell someone about something. But here, I just wanted to mention, if we used talk instead, it would sound a bit arrogant. Let me talk about myself. Even if we added a little, the expression to talk about oneself often has a negative connotation. It's usually used to mean that the person in question is self-centered and doesn't talk about anything else. For example, all she does is talk about herself all the time. So, let me talk about myself sounds like you're volunteering to ignore everyone else and just focus on yourself. Now, of course, as a non-native speaker, your intent would probably still be understood, but making these changes can help you sound more natural. So, to summarize, you tell someone about something. I can is often used to talk about ability or to offer to do someone a favor, unless we add certain words to give more context. A situation usually describes the events happening in our lives or the circumstances we find ourselves in. And when we want to share information about ourselves, we can use this phrase, tell you a little about myself. I'd like to. Why don't I? And there we have it. If you liked this video, or if you'd like me to make more videos like it, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And a final note, I do offer private online lessons, so if you have any questions or you'd like to work with me on your English, you can contact me at mgbp7@yahoo.com, which you should see on the screen now. Links to my website and my contact information are also in the description box below. With that said, thank you for watching.